Hey, what's up, beautiful people? Welcome to Tia Talks with your girl, Sugar Free Tea. And guess what? We have a guest that we've seen before. Jeanette is back, y'all. And guess what? We finna have one of those, another deep dive conversation, right? And today's topic is going to be about miseducation, right? And I know you're probably like, what the heck you talking about, Tia? Well, you're gonna see. You are in for a treat. As always, Jeanette. Where you at? Where you from? What you doing in these streets? What have you been up to?
From New York, specifically Harlem. Been up to getting ready for these winter months. I think today is like 47 degrees. Looking forward to the closeout of this year. And that's about it. How about you?
Listen, we at 65 degrees today.
Oh,
It's a little bit of wind. I'm enjoying it. That's like, all right, it's sweater weather, leather weather. I'm ready for it because the cold out here is a different type of cold. And so I'm not ready for it. I can take a New York winter any day. Give me a hat, a scarf, a gloves. Let me cover my face. Let me put my layers on. I feel like I'll get warm. Here in Nevada, I feel like it's to the bone, and I can't get rid of that cold that's touching
oh,
my bones because my
okay.
bones don't warm up. So it's a different type of cold out here that I'm not ready for yet. But I'm like, okay. But right now it's nice, it's windy, it's a good little breeze. I throw my hoodie on and I'm like, I'm set, I'm good to go. And I'm like, all right, bet. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, getting ready for the winter months. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's gonna be a long winter, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's already November. So we have until what? Maybe like April?
Well, by the time April comes for me, we're gonna be warm again. So
Yeah, for
maybe
you guys, not for us East Coasters.
so this should be fun, right?
Yeah.
So people out there in the world, I know you like get to the conversation already, right? And so, like I said, today's conversation is about miseducation, right? And today's focus is really going to be on K through 12, right? The idea becomes one, what was the school system's original purpose, right? How has it shifted over time? And we're just going to kind of deep dive into, you know how we do. We just sit here, we chit chat, we throw out our opinions and things like that, along with some facts, because you know Jeanette is the I'm start calling her the fact lady, right? So she is all about facts, and I'm just about running my mouth. So you know what? If you want to start, Jeanette, what's some stats you got for us today?
Okay, so educational ranking, and this is from 2021. So if you could think of three states off the top of your head, how would you rank them in education? What would be your first state, your second state, your third state?
Oh God, as far as like what's the best?
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Okay, I would think New York is
Okay.
number one, right? Only because I'm from New York and I feel like we had to do regions. Like it was so many things that we
Absolutely.
had to accomplish to get to the next level. So I'm like, well, I said our school system has to be the bomb. Like who we competing against to have to do all of this stuff. So I would say New York.
Okay.
I would say, ooh, I always think big cities would have great school systems because they have so many people. Um, oh, you know what? I would say Tennessee.
Okay.
Um, and I would say, what would be the third state I would choose? Hmm. Maybe, I was gonna say Alabama, but I think their school system probably sucks. No offense, but I almost went to high school there, and I was like, what is this curriculum? This is nothing like what I was used to. Um,
Right.
you know what? I'm gonna go with California just because, like I said, I think of big cities. So
Yeah.
we'll go with New York, Tennessee, and California.
Okay. So you had one of those correct.
Oh,
So for countries, US is number one.
Okay.
Number two is United Kingdom,
Mm,
so a little northwest of Europe. Germany is number three, more central Europe. Canada, North America. France, Western Europe. Switzerland, Central Europe. Japan, East
mm.
Asia. Australia, Southern Hemisphere. Sweden, Northern Europe, and the Netherlands, Northwestern Europe, are
Okay.
the top 10 in the educational ranking.
Oh. So US is number one.
Yeah.
And what was number 10?
Number 10 is Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yep.
Hmm. I wonder how they rank as far as what makes it the best and then what makes it not so great. I don't want to say the worst, but just on that scale, great and not so great.
I
Um,
think there are a few contributing factors. One is the funding, right? So, US, our funding comes from predominantly Albany, right? So, these budgets are already allocated at least a year out. And then you look at, let's say, um, Japan, right? You have a completely different culture and outlook, pursuit of education, right? Like that is already calculated into the household when it comes down to their education. So it's a few contributing factors that assist in a ranking of education in all of these different countries.
mm. Okay, so if we go back to our original question, right? What do you think the school system's original purpose was, and how has it shifted over time? What would you say to that?
So I think the original purpose was, obviously to educate, but also to offer these trade skills, vocational skills to students through computation, right? I can't have you working in a car manufacturing factory if you're not good at math. Right? Like this requires assembling parts and, being able to calculate, how fast the car can go. Like, there's a whole entire assembly line.
Mhm.
Um, I also think that, you're preparing the next generation to come into the workforce. And that requires a baseline of education, the way that it was practiced to us when we were in school. Education is supposed to lead to a prosperous career. And the higher you go in education, the more opportunities,
You're
not so much.
supposed to have, right? It's like
Yes.
supposed to have. So when I think about the shift, right, it's like in the beginning, I think it was intentionally created to develop critical thinkers. And I think now over time, it's more so towards obedient workers, right? Um, I think that there's this idea that, hey, let's teach them what it's like to work now while they're in school, right? I think about when I was in school, you go, you line up, you're in an order, right? You sit at your desk, you have your, your materials and everything prepared. Um, you have whatever you're working on, right? So if it's time for math, you're working on math. If it's time for reading, you're working on reading. Whatever it is, you know what your schedule is going to look like for the day. But you sit down and you're spoken to, or rather, you speak when you're spoken to, when you're called upon. You go home, you do homework. Well, you get a lunch. Let's go there first, right? You get time for lunch, you get time for recess, and it's almost identical to the workplace, right?
Very true.
You show up on time, right? Most people gather their things before they actually get started with work, whatever it is that they need, the coffee, the snack, the whatever. They gather their materials, they do their work, they speak when they're spoken to, right? Whether it's in meetings or because they need to work with other co-workers and things like that in a team setting. You get your lunch, right? Your free time to do whatever it is you want to do, your recess play, whatever. You go back to your desk or depending on, your station, depending on what type of work you do. And yeah, then it's time to go home. And then sometimes people take work home with them, right? Homework, right? They don't finish everything at the job, so they might still be sending out emails. They're finishing up last minute projects. And like I said, it's just this idea that they're really identical to each other. So it makes me wonder, like, are we really creating critical thinkers in some aspects, maybe for some industries, or are we really just creating obedient workers? I
I
don't
like
know.
that. I like that comparison. I think that that juxtaposition between a student and an employee and a symbolism between the two is conducive to our economy, right? The purpose of getting a great education is so that you can be prepared for independent living,
Right.
which requires some form of employment training. So that starts in school, right?
And then you know what? It's so crazy because just to kind of go back, I'm thinking about even on a preschool level, right? The whole idea behind preschool is what? To teach basically how to be a friend, right? How to get along with others. So like it's a form
That's
of
true.
socializing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's like, listen, let's teach you how to socialize now. Let's teach you how to be nice to people now. Let's teach you how to share your things now. I remember I had a student in the preschool classroom, and there was this idea that, well, one of my friends had said to me, kids are supposed to share. And I said, no, they're not. Like, they don't have to. If I'm playing with it, and I said in our classroom, right, we teach this idea of I'm playing with it right now, but when I'm done, you can have it. Right? Not, oh, I want that. And then this person automatically has to give it to this person just because they want it right now. No, I'm playing with it right now, but when I'm done, I'll give it to you. That's it. Kids don't have to share. And kids don't, you really don't have, sorry, I get really up like, this is because it's almost like a pet peeve.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it kind of reminds me of sometimes, like, let's say if I buy something in the house, and I always go off topic and come back. Let's say if I buy something, right? And I put it in the fridge, and the kiddos are like, can I have it? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, you're not eating it yet. Who says that I have to rush to eat my thing?
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
got you the same thing that I got. You ate yours the same day. I didn't want mine that day. I'm saving it because when I want to eat it or when I want to drink it, I'm gonna have it for then. And it kind of just brings me back to this idea of, like I said, just socializing, getting along, accepting no as an answer. Like that's the hardest thing for people to do, is to accept no as an answer. And it just, I don't know. Anyway, off topic, but let's get back on topic with this. It just leads to so many different things,
It
because if you think
does.
about socializing, it's like, well, how does socializing in the beginning then help towards socializing in middle school and high school and then at the workplace? And it's like all of these lessons come from your first teacher, which is supposed to be your parent, right? That's what they say.
Absolutely.
Is your parent, but you're spending basically 8 hours a day in school, right? And so actually the first teacher is the teacher. The first lessons you get may come from home and may come from your parents, but your first actual teacher is the actual teacher, right? Like you either gonna love your teacher or not, which is gonna create an environment, right? So I even think about like how much, I say all of that to say it makes me wonder how much of a child's future is predetermined by the demographics of their school environment, right?
Mm.
Because of the lessons that we're getting early on are much different than what we learn in middle school and what we learn in high school and college and beyond. So it just, I don't know, I just kind of thought of that, like how much is predetermined? Like how much does environment in the school system play a role?
I think that's a really, really good question because your home is your first learning environment. And your parents are your role models. Your siblings become your role models, right? These people that you are surrounded by have a heavy influence on and a determination on who you become.
Right.
And so it's interesting that you bring up that subject because there is some more stats that I have for you.
Oh,
So the student teacher ratio, and this is based in New York City. I started there. So New York City has a student teacher ratio of 12 to 1. That's what it's supposed to be. We
okay.
know that all schools are not in compliance with that
Of course
ratio.
not. Right.
There was a New York law that went out where students in a classroom had to be modified. So K through 3, 4 through 8, and high school. So no more than 20 students in K through 3, no
Mm.
more than 23 students in fourth grade to eighth grade, no more than 25 students in high school. Now, to go back, the student teacher ratio is supposed to
Well,
be what? 12 to 1.
say
So,
12. That's double. In
exactly.
all cases, it's double.
So, I mean, California has the highest student teacher ratio coming in at 22 to 1. The best state for teachers, New York, Washington, Virginia, Utah, and Maryland. The worst states for teachers, and you brought this state up before, Tennessee, Nevada, New Hampshire, Hawaii, and Maine. And this is from Wallet Hub website, September 16th, 2024.
That's crazy. Not Tennessee.
Yes.
Ugh,
Nevada's on that list too.
ugh. Well, listen. Let me tell you something. Before I moved here, I heard about the school system here, and I was like, you know what? We just gonna find a great school in a great neighborhood, and we gonna go from there.
So
And
look at that statement that you just brought up. Most people who are, let's say, in a particular class, um, choose their living, their residence based on the grades of the school system.
right.
So it's interesting how one plays on the other. Like,
It's like there's an assumption like, listen, if I live in a pretty decent neighborhood where there's community, then 9 times out of 10, the schooling is going to be pretty decent as well, right? Um,
exactly.
not something that we 100% depend on, but, or not but, and I guess I should say, um, you know, what's the relationship between the school and the community, right? What types of events do they have in the community? What types of fundraisers? What does the, I guess for me, I've never really looked at what the curriculum looks like so much because I'm like, you got to get it done anyway. It really doesn't matter what the curriculum looks like. Um, but maybe that's something I probably should have thought about, right? Like, is it just a bunch of pages printed out and hey, just do it? Or,
Right.
you know, like I know one thing Papa has been asking for is a field trip. He feels like there are not enough field trips at his school.
Okay.
Jordan just went on a field trip, and he's like, "I've been there for what he said 4 years already. I haven't gone on a field trip," and I'm like,
Oh, wow.
like the kid is like, "Hey, I need some outdoor enrichment."
Right.
Like kids know what
Absolutely.
they need, and it could just be because she went on a field trip and she was talking about like we did this and we did that, blah, blah, blah. But he has a great point. He's in third grade, and so I guess for growing up in New York, field trips was an every year thing. It doesn't matter what
True.
grade you were in. We
That's
went
very
on field
true.
trips in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. Every year there was a field trip somewhere. We had the volunteers, we had the school bus, or we got on the train, and everybody better stay together, right?
Nobody got lost.
Right. Everybody better stay together. We getting on this train. We doing this thing. And I think those are the things that I kind of miss from the school system here, because those are experiences that I have that he won't even understand it, right? Like Papa getting on the train, he's like, what are you talking about? What's that? What's a train? You know, I don't know what that is. Like the Iron Horse, boy. Like,
Now, how do you feel about these different states being the best and the worst?
you know what? I guess for me, it goes back to wondering like, how could there even be a worse?
Mm,
That is the question that comes to mind. Like, it makes me wonder if all states do, which I'm assuming yes, curriculum differently, right? It's
absolutely.
structured differently. Is there in one state you have to have regents exams, in another state they don't even know what a regents exam is?
Right.
Like, where does the determination for how curriculum is what's the word I'm looking for? Uh I guess how is determined? Like, who determines the curriculum? Is it a state's job? Is there some sort of federal level to it where they say, look, at the end of the day, you gotta have this, right?
Right.
And the states say, well, as long as we follow this, then we can do whatever we want to do. Because I really don't understand how it could be a worse. Like, I can understand, let's say if there's a lack of teachers, right? Then okay, then that means that there aren't enough teachers to teach, right? So
Mhm.
then what do we do when there's a lack of, right? You might take shortcuts, well, things like that. But even knowing that there's a worse,
Is alarming.
right? Like, how
I
do you
agree.
where is the criteria? Like, there should be a baseline criteria for whatever. And
Mhm.
I'm wondering, where's that baseline criteria, or what is that baseline criteria, and who determines that?
I think also too what contributes to that is the dichotomy of the male teachers and the female teachers, which there has been a massive influx during and after COVID. You had so many people that were losing their jobs that teaching became one of the most sought after careers because it had the stability, supposedly, right? So when you look at some of these ratios, um, let's say when it comes to the teachers, you have now um, 80% of New York's 200,000 public school teachers are white,
Okay.
right? 8% are Black, 7% are Hispanic, and 3% are Asian.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a completely different demographic than when you and I were in school.
Right.
So it just goes to show you, right? Like you have this individual, if it's 80% of 200,000 public schools, this is the educational instructor for your child.
Right.
Right?
And then
And
how important is it for students to see themselves in their teachers?
even in a teacher body, right? Because it may not be my homeroom teacher, it may be my physics teacher, right? It may be the assistant principal. Like, where is this student drawing their influence from, especially when making life decisions and independent living skills?
Hmm. Do you think that schools make an effort to hire diverse faculty, or do you think it's an afterthought?
Oh, that's a great question. I do think that there's a lot of effort that goes into seeking out people of diverse backgrounds, trying to make it more multicultural. I think that it depends on the neighborhoods,
Okay.
but there's also this fallacy, unfortunately, that um, you also have to look at the credentialing aspect of it, right? I believe it's only 54% of the student bodies are actually credentialed in these public schools. And so when you have a charter school that comes along that can receive both public and private funding, then they do not have to follow the same protocols. They do not have to follow the same state curriculum. And
Mm.
so you can hire a teacher who may not have passed their credentialing tests to be licensed as a
Mm.
teacher. And so it becomes a tad bit harder to seek out more males of color,
Mhm.
more women of color. And listen, because I was on the educational side as a teacher, I know how difficult, how arduous that job is. Lack of support, lack of support from administration, lack of support from parents.
Mm.
And then you have an overcrowded class, lack of resources, and the demand that comes with teaching, the poor wages, poor salary, lack of welfare of your health, of your mental health, poor benefits. Like all of these factors go into it because it's not just about the education for the student, it's also about the support that the teacher is
Right.
getting, right? Like the funding is coming from one big pot.
And we
And
all
the
gotta
way
get in that.
to procure that funding is through grades. And so social promotion, right?
Right.
How can we get more funding into this school? Oh, let's get a basketball team, have a student body of athletes. That way we can allocate that budget line for the athletes, but then also pull more money in to paying the faculty more.
Right. Hmm.
That was the long answer.
Listen, everybody got to get paid one way or another. It
Right.
becomes who has great ideas for on how we can achieve this. It seems like that's kind of where it kicks in. Like, all right, who has an idea for how we get more funding into this school? And
Absolutely.
more funding into this school, how can we just give me my money? That's what the kids are saying on the internet now.
Um, But like even when you look at the student body population, right? So we already spoke about the stats on the teacher
Mhm.
demographics, but when you look at the student body demographics, that's just as alarming. So
Okay.
this is all with public schools. So 14.4% white,
Mhm.
24.4% black, 16.3% Asian or Pacific Islander,
Yeah.
41.3% Hispanic, 1.2% American Indian or Alaska Native, 0.5% Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. I
Mm.
mean, you have a mixed background of students, but
Right.
unfortunately, it does not align with the
Teacher.
teacher body population.
Right. Hmm. How important is it to have that space where you see people who look like you?
I think it's extremely important. It goes back to the point that you made earlier, where school is a model for the workplace. And so to have that familiarity of culture, of heritage, of practices, of tradition, especially in an environment where you are committed to 7, 8 hours of the day.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a quarter of the day already. Um, it has a heavy influence on your decision making, as you stated earlier, your critical thinking, right? Because you're able to express yourself using, what's the word that I'm looking for? You're using colloquialisms. It's similar vernaculars when you are speaking with your teacher. I'm reflecting back on my experience, right? Like we had a heavy influence of mixed cultural backgrounds from different teachers, from different students. And so we legitimately was one big melting pot. So when you see this professional in front of you, and they are exhibiting their pedagogy of expertise, their
Right.
study of academia, whatever they graduated in. We were the beneficiaries of that,
Right.
right? Like our teachers were licensed, our teachers were credentialed, our teachers were high achieving academic professionals.
Right.
And for the most part, so are we.
Mm.
For the most part, for the
No,
majority of
you are
us
absolutely right.
are.
But you know what? Well, not but, and I will add to that.
Please.
Um, you bring up a great point, right? Because it really does matter, especially for me, high school, right? High school, I did not realize it at that time, but that was a moment that defined um adulthood, right?
Absolutely.
And what adulthood looked like. Now, I will say this. I've gone to basically 4 schools in my entire life, right?
Okay.
Because what you might as well, I don't count preschool, but I went to preschool, right? And then we had kindergarten through 6th grade. And then most schools now are kind of separated. Like you got middle school and then you kind of graduate and go to high school. Whereas the school that we went to, it started at 7th grade for me. So I went to Douglas, of course, from 7th grade all the way until 12th grade, right? So that was a long time of the same practices, the same conditions, the same ideas of, listen, teaching somebody that they are a professional, even when they're only 12 or 13 years old. Like being a professional has nothing to do with the type of work you do. Being a professional is the idea of who are you as a person? Who do you want to become as a person? How do you treat yourself and how do you treat other people?
Absolutely.
Right? It was this idea of, hey, when you walk through these doors, have some respect for yourself. Come in here with your clothes straight and iron.
Absolutely.
If you don't have it, ask for it. We'll get it for you.
Absolutely.
You know, and I think besides the curriculum, like when I think about miseducation, that's what I think of. I'm not thinking about curriculum, right? I'm thinking about what is really being taught, because the idea that I think school should be is not just curriculum. We get it, right? We got to know how to read, write, think, critical thinking, all those things. Those things will come no matter what. But getting into the idea of what um what practices are you putting into place for someone, right? When a child comes in, are you saying good morning, good afternoon? Are you standing up straight? Are you telling them, hey, sit up? Are you teaching them things about life? Again, I think school should really, I don't think it not only, but it should have a focus on how to be a better person. Like, not for others, for yourself. Can you control your emotional IQ without throwing a fit? Are you open to hearing what other people have to say without throwing a fit? Um, can you accept differences among people, right? So even in those lessons of math, science, history, and all those things, what do we actually teach our students? All right, the assignment didn't get done. Are you going to say, oh, you didn't get that assignment? No. What happens if you don't get done? There are consequences, whether positive or negative, right? Teach them about the consequences of what happens when you don't do the things that you're supposed to do. You give a kid a 0, they get enough zeros, they still not going to do it if they don't want to do it. I think there should be this idea of teaching them why it's important to do the things that they need to do. It's not just because it's homework. It's not just because it's, oh, we got to follow this criteria so that you could pass at the end of the year. And I think in a way, for instance, Joe will talk about Bronx schools, and he's like, man, you went to school in Harlem, but he feels like his education was better than my education, because he's like, no, we had teachers who they talked about history and culture and who we are as Black people, and they lifted us up and this and that and the third. And I'm like, yeah, we did that around, like the holidays, or a teacher was absent and you pop in the VCR and, watch the movie Black History Month. We did those things. And he's like, no, this was every day for us. And I didn't get that experience until high school, where it was like every day learning to love who you are, your culture, be proud and respectful of yourself. So that's kind of crazy to me. But
I think it's interesting that you bring up that point because that leads to another set of stats. So last stats, this
Mhm.
is the last set, is standardized testing.
Oh Lord.
So, standardized testing is mandated by the Federal Every Student Succeeds Act, and that came into place in 2015.
Mhm.
So high school students must pass 5 state exams to graduate. This is only for New York State. I cannot speak to any other state.
Mhm.
ELA is third grade to eighth grade. Science is fifth grade to eighth grade, right? So math will be considered algebra, geometry, algebra, 1, 2, 3. We call this sequential math.
Right.
Science, US history, global history, and geography in a foreign language.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, for us, we had to take a regents in all 5 of those areas.
Right.
But now, when it comes to the federal government, this ESSA Act from 2015, it is officially on the ballot to disband regents examination.
Really?
Yes,
That's crazy, because it was a big deal to get a Regents diploma.
that's
It
what
was
I'm
like they
saying.
hyped that joint up like, yeah, you got a diploma, then you got a Regents diploma. Everybody,
Right,
it's
right.
like they made it this thing to want to work towards. Like, no, I need my Regents diploma.
But you
I
know
don't
what I
even
think
think
the
colleges thought about that. Like, they just want to know, did you graduate? Did you finish
right.
school?
I think that so again, it goes back to this very, very profound statement that you made. And I think that that should be like the catalyst of this miseducation. Shout out to Lauren Hill. But
Right.
but how school is modeled just like the workplace, right? Because think about it, in order to become a teacher, to be certified and licensed, you have to pass a state exam in that area of expertise.
Hmm.
So you can't just go and fill out an application and say, hey, I want to be a teacher. How do I start teaching for the Department of Education? No, you have to literally go, pay for the examination,
Right.
take the test, pass the test, and then you have to retest.
Mm.
I think it's like every, and if anybody out there knows the specific criteria of it, then chime in.
Put in the chat.
But I think it's like every 3 to 4 years, you have to retest just to maintain that credential. And what that credential does is then allows you to apply to any public school, to
Mhm.
any charter school. If you apply to a charter school, then you can bargain for a higher salary. But it opens up that door for public, private, and Catholic, right? Catholic doesn't require it. Private doesn't require it, but public schools do. Now, charter doesn't require it either. Now,
Look.
going back to the statement that you made earlier, right? Like, why is standardized testing no longer as important now as it was when you and I was in school?
Hmm.
Simple. It's very, very simple. Uh, Albany is able to negotiate more funding
Mhm.
when the number of students passing with regents examination certificate, high school diplomas
Okay.
versus just a high school diploma. It's almost as if it gives you another layer of achievement, right? Like I'm gonna take my car to the dealership
Right.
to be repaired versus taking it to Hunts Point to have a person look at it who may or may not be a legitimate mechanic,
I'm
right?
about to go get that deal real quick. Let me just go have my homeboy from over here look
So
at,
see,
no,
you're willing to pay less, right, for similar work,
right,
but because this person doesn't have the degree or the credential, you're gonna go where it's easy on your pockets versus willing to pay more for that degree. And I think that that was the understanding when they made these protocols like, oh, you have to get a regent's degree because then you'll be able to, I don't know, maybe apply to more colleges, maybe be more appealing to
right. And I
colleges.
think that's what it is. It's all about the look and the appeal. What have you done in your high school years, right? What contributions have you made to society, right? To your community, to even to the school, like, right?
And
What
the regent's degree is a metric to show that you have achieved a high level of computation in these 5 areas.
right? It's like the beginning is it's the beginning of what the college future is to hold. And then when you get to
Exactly.
college, it's like, wait a minute, this work is easier than the work I was doing. That's how I felt anyway. I felt
Okay.
like when I got to college, I'm like, yo, I was a C student. I was an average
Okay.
student, right? In high
Okay.
school. Um, and then when I got to college, I was like, what? I could bust out this work. Boop, 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 boop. All of a sudden, I became an A student,
Look at
always on the
that.
dean's list and everything. It was so excited. And it's
Look at
like,
that.
as now again, now it makes me wonder, is it because of the school that I went to?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the curriculum that we were taught. And like you said, we had professional, credential, licensed professional teachers.
Absolutely.
Is that the standard for everywhere, though?
No, it's not. It really isn't because you have a lot of students that leave high school and crash in college, right? Um, Furthermore, would you say that your experience in high school was competitive versus being a college student?
Mm, I think so. I feel like I have no clue what was going on in high school. Like
Okay.
I thought I was there for like, that's school, this is gonna be fun. And they were like, girl, pull your books out. What you doing? I was like, wait, what? Like, wait, what? I gotta what to do? Like that, it was really critical thinking. It wasn't like, oh, you could just turn in any paper and that was it. No, a teacher was going to read that paper and grade that paper for real, for real. It was not a, oh, you did the assignment? Check. No. Mm-mm. No. Whereas I felt like in college, you did the assignment? Check. There were some teachers, and it really, I think, again, who you are, right, plays a or has a great value in what you do and how you serve others, right? There are some teachers, even in high school, there are some teachers who weren't as strong as others, and they may get overrun, right? They may not have that confidence to be able to say, listen, this is my classroom, and in my classroom, this is how it's going to go, right? And so then student population kind of takes over, and it's like they lose control, right? And so they don't have the structure that they want to have, or the power and the control that they want to have over their classroom.
Mhm.
I've seen that as well in high school. Every teacher wasn't a strong teacher, but I think every teacher was a great teacher.
Absolutely.
I think that they all had value, right, to add to the student population. There was just some who knew how to do it better than others. And I think that's where culture comes into play. Because again, one teacher in particular that I'm thinking about um was of a different ethnicity, right? And it's like at that time when you have a student population that's like, oh, we could get away with this, like, oh, we could just be loud, or we could just be, disruptive, and the teacher doesn't know how to handle that, it's going to continue every single day until they figure it out. And it's like once they figure it out, then the student population is like, I bet, like, all right, let's learn now.
Right, right.
But if you can't get past that, it's like that saying, like, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That's
Very true.
that's a real thing.
I agree.
It's a real thing. And because students are sometimes the worst.
I think for me, what I would say in conclusion, I don't have any more stats.
But listen, I know I can always come to you to get them numbers right, honey. So I totally appreciate, first off, I appreciate you even coming and having this conversation. I told you I
Yeah,
always look forward to
anytime.
having these conversations with you because it really is alarming and enlightening at the same time, right? You don't know what you don't know. And the information that you've shared, for one, I never would have really thought about it like that. Like when I think about just the school experience in general, I think about, well, I got through it. It's done. It's over. Sometimes I'll chit chat with my kids and I'm like, first thing I say to my mom was like, well, I finished school already. You the one who got to go. Like, I love that line. I'm like, I didn't already finish school. You the one who got to go through it now, just do what you're supposed to do kind of thing. And, you know, there are other students in other states and other countries that not so much, right?
Yeah.
School is not important. It's not a big factor. It's like they know what type of job they're gonna already get into or what type of,
Right, exactly.
and that makes me think about, some of the stats that you gave about the best country and the not so great country, right? Like, well, what is it about the Netherlands? Is it the fact that they already know what industry they're going into? School is not important because I already know what kind of work you're doing. All you
Yeah,
need to know is to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So compared to a country like the US where there are so many different industries, right? You got
right.
lawyers and doctors and engineers and
Absolutely.
education. Like, you're not finna work on my body as a doctor and not know. There are some things you just know you need the education for. And there's some things like working in a warehouse where you don't necessarily need an education. Can you read? Can you write? And can you communicate effectively?
So I'll share two instances with you. One from the education side, and this coincides with my experience on miseducation. It's not just blame the students or lack of discipline or blame the government for not pumping more money into the educational system. I think that it is a poor collaborative effort
Right.
when it comes to miseducation. So, as a teacher, one of the worst experiences that I had
Mhm.
was on the day that I was absent. Of course, it would be on the day that I was absent,
Right.
right? I'm
That's when
doing
all the best
this.
things happen on the days you're absent.
So, I'm doing this. We had teacher partners that we would work with.
Okay.
And my teacher partner was of Asian ethnicity.
Okay.
I don't know if she felt like she had to find more of a social engagement to reach the students
Mhm.
to have that level of discipline that you were speaking on. And so she calls me one day and says, hey, I need you to advocate for me, to speak on my behalf. An incident happened today,
Mhm.
and I just need you to talk with the superintendent and the principal so that you can say something about me in good faith. And so, long story short,
Mhm.
she was given an example to the students and thought that one way to express the relationship of two characters in a story that she was trying to get the students excited about was to use the N word.
Oh.
And
Oh,
so, when
well, that's the language they use. So let me try it. Was that
that was her, well, this is how you guys talk to each other, right? Again, Asian woman. And so when she asked me to do that for her, I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, right? But my answer was no.
right?
Right? So
uh, what's that guy from that show? He'd be like, "That's a no for me, dog." I forgot his name.
Right, that part right there. So that was one of my worst experiences from the perspective of a teacher. Now, one of my best experiences from the perspective of a student was in high school because our teachers came from our neighborhoods.
Right.
Our teachers were a part of our communities.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I appreciated so much about these professional adults
Right.
in our life, committed to see us prosper. And the love, our teachers had genuine love for us.
Mhm.
That was one of my best experiences. How about you?
Mm. As a teacher, I think, well, I was doing preschool level.
Okay.
Right? So for me, preschool level was like,
Is that more parent involvement, right? Or it should
mm,
be?
should be,
Okay.
right? I don't even know if I want to say what I want to say, but this is supposed to be like a no holds bar conversation. There are some preschools where it really is just playtime. It's a babysitting.
Okay.
I've worked at some locations that are just like, what are we doing here? Let's get some structure. I'm not saying print out papers, but hey, you can learn through play. So
Right.
if we're gonna play, let's for real play where we're learning, right? You
Absolutely.
know, and I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Uh, but let me think. I think that would be one place in particular that I worked at. This was in California, so Long Beach City College. I think that their program in regard to the preschool program was great because not only did I go to college there, right? So I got to learn from some of the teachers who were a part of the system as well,
Okay.
right? But then they had like these learning labs where you can kind of go in and view the students and see exactly what it is they're doing and how they're doing it. And it was to a T, exactly what the professors said we should be doing in the classroom. Best practices, right? Is exactly what was going on in those learning labs and in the facility. And then when I started working there, it was like, oh snap, this is for real. This is the real
Okay.
deal. Like there is learning that is taking place at an early age. There's also socializing that is being learned. There are also students who need a little bit extra support, and they have that support that they need, right? That's when I think parents really come into effect. When you have the students that need a little bit of extra support, other than that, the parents are like satisfied. So it's like, hey, listen, I got to go to work. They're too occupied. At the preschool level, parents are really occupied with getting to work. And they don't really worry about their children unless they have to, or unless a situation arises where they need to worry.
Okay.
Other than that, it's like, hey, is my child in a safe place? Yes. Are they learning something? Yes. Is there proof? Yes. Like, look at the things that we have on the board, right? There's an open door policy. Walk in at any time. We're not hiding anything. Do what you need to do. So I think for me, that was my best. Those were some of my best experiences,
Okay.
right? Like really understanding that children are big balls of emotion, and then also understanding that adults are also big balls of emotion, right? The difference between the two is even though an adult should know by now how to do it, they really forget. They forget to be childlike again, right? And learn how to solve problems, be angry for a moment and not for an entire freaking season. Right? Because
I
adults, for
agree.
we teach children, right? We teach children to be, it's okay, be upset for the moment,
Mm-hmm.
right? Talk about it, get over it. And then when we become adults, we forget everything that we learned from back then, and we want to be mad for years and years and years at people who, why?
Yeah.
You know, so those are some of my best moments. Now, as far as when it comes to, I don't know if I have a, I don't know if I have a worst.
Okay.
The only thing I could think of, let me tell you this. The only thing that I could think of, right, that happened in high school, quick story, probably two quick story. I put up 3 fingers, but I might go to 3, but I'm gonna try to keep it at 2, right? There was one teacher who I believe he thought I was engaging in sexual activity.
Okay.
And I believe he thought maybe it was his place to say, like, once you, like, when you have a white dress, it's a white dress, but then when you're not wearing a white dress anymore, it's like sullied, right? And at the time, I didn't quite understand. I didn't know
Yeah.
what he was talking about because my mind wasn't even thinking about sexual activity at the time when he had this conversation. Now, maybe later on, by the time I hit about 18, 19, that's a different story. But well, yeah, about 17, 18 is when I was like, what's this about? Right. But at the time when he was having that conversation, I was like, I don't get this. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. But why are we talking about dresses being sullied? And
Right.
it was about, he wanted me to write a report, right, about a student who had gotten into some trouble.
Okay.
And I said, I'm gonna mind my business, right? Like, I'm not in that. I'm gonna mind my business. I'm not writing anything. Nope, you won't get me to tell nothing, right? And then that's when that conversation came up. And then I said no again. I didn't understand what that had to do with anything. And then I got a phone call at home to my parents to try to encourage me to write a report on this particular student, whatever, whatever. Needless to say, I still said no. My parents was like, just write, no, I'm not. It has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And then next thing you know, stuff escalated and I got a subpoena. I got a subpoena to go to court. And so yeah, it went that far.
Wow.
It went that far. So that was probably an unpleasant experience that I had with a teacher. Oh, we had our French teacher who I crossed my legs in class. I will never forget this. I crossed my legs in class. So we wore uniform, of course, right? And my skirt wasn't particularly short or anything, but I crossed my legs. And she called me a pig. She basically called me a pig. She was like, put your legs down. Basically, like, don't cross my legs. I guess I don't know what's up with the French with crossing the legs, but don't do it in French class. I'm letting everybody know right now. If you have a French
Wow.
teacher, don't cross your legs in a classroom because they may they may call you a dirty little pig or something.
Oh,
I think those are they hilarious stories now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, like why would you say something like that? And then the third teacher, again in high school, but again, I think looking back, right, if I don't think about how they said it, right, what they said, if I look about, okay, Tia, think about now why they may have said it, right, it still goes back to, hey, there's a time and a place for everything, right? When I think about it now, there's a time and a place for everything. Right now in this classroom, uncross your legs. You sit down straight, right? Like facing forward, put your legs under. What you crossing your legs for, right? Maybe it was my age too, because like I said, high school. So it's like, well, what you crossing your legs for at 14? What you doing, right? um, and then I had another teacher, and I don't quite remember this story, but I remember what he said, and he was like, you are now on 125th Street. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? Because I
right.
took offense to it. Like, because
Absolutely.
I'm like, well, I'm black, right? And we are in Harlem, right? You teach at
Right.
a Harlem school. So
Right.
with that message, what are you really trying? Was it because I was loud? And maybe you didn't, maybe you felt like you can't be black and loud. Because that's the thing. They think like the loud black woman or black people are just loud in general and things like that.
Right.
So he wanted me to keep my voice down. And he's like, because I'm like, I never really heard nobody yelling on 125th Street. So again, I didn't get it at the time. Most of the things that I experienced, I didn't get it at the time. It just kind of it pissed me off because it was embarrassing, if anything.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't really get it. And I don't know. I think that's probably, yeah, those are probably, I don't, mm. I just got funny stories like that. I don't have anything where, you know,
Those are actually sad stories.
oh, yeah, that's crazy, huh?
Yes,
But that's,
absolutely.
yeah, I didn't really think about, I'm trying to think of there any other experiences that, mm-mm.
No, okay.
No, and I'm even trying to think about, I think my great stories, if anything, come from probably college.
Okay.
I think college is the place where that's the first place where I knew I could do it.
Okay.
Like there was that encouragement, and professors are very like, all right, we adults now, so we could chat it up, like for real, like come to my class after and let's talk for real. And I think that's, me, I'm all about relationship building. So I felt like, oh,
Absolutely.
they people, whereas in high school, they still try to kind of tell you and mold you into this
Yeah,
citizen or model student or whatever it is you're supposed to be, right?
that's true.
Instead of encouraging you to be who you are with guidance.
I like that.
I think that high school still, to some degree, or school in general, right? Even if we do the whole K through 12, the object is to model you to be a model student. Now the
Okay.
question becomes, well, what the hell is a model student? Whose model are we going by? Because
Right.
everybody's situation is different, right? Maybe in
Absolutely.
my household that we all talk loud. Maybe we all get excited. Maybe that's the thing in my household. So instead of yelling at me in the whole classroom, like, what do you think you're doing? You're not outside on 125th Street. Maybe you should have just pulled me after class, like, hey, yo, I noticed that you was kind of loud during class today. You all right? Maybe I would have said, oh my God, I was so excited about this. Or maybe I would have said, oh my gosh, I
Right.
forgot I was that
Absolutely.
loud.
Absolutely.
But the
And that,
idea is, for whatever reason, people like to embarrass people.
and this all ties into miseducation.
Right. So that's this whole idea of, like, you're right, absolutely. Miseducation on so many different fronts, right?
Absolutely.
It's like
Absolutely.
not just miseducation with curriculum, but miseducation with even you mentioned like the standardized testing, right?
Mhm.
And it's like just standardized testing reinforce. I wanted to go into this, but I said, you know what? I'm gonna save this for another tea talk, and we're gonna continue this later on, because the question that I thought about was, are standardized testing, is it really just about like assessing learning, or do they reinforce stereotypes and biases? So I was like, ooh, I think that'd be a goodie
That's a great subject.
to kind of chat about too. And then like I
Absolutely.
thought about even in elementary, they had tag class, talented and gifted.
Hmm.
I'm like, what did I do different from anybody else? Like, why do we even have it? You got your talented and gifted, you got your regular classes, right? Like,
Right.
I don't necessarily want to be different like that, like talented and gifted. What do we do extra?
Right.
More
Right.
difficult work? Is that it?
Right.
Like, just a
Right.
level, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and labeling, there's so many different things that we could kind of go towards, like labeling in the school system, such as tag or the troubled kids, right? Like,
Oh, yes.
it's three
Completely different
groups,
spectrums.
right? It's like, all right, you got the troubled kids, you got the tag class, and then you got just your regulars, which is like,
And
ooh,
yeah, the special needs kids and
yeah, right. You got a whole
yeah,
lot of different, labels.
absolutely.
Um, and then, when you were talking about testing, I thought about like even tracking kids at an early level. I wish I knew it. I need to really get on my stats. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna practice like learning about stats and figures and numbers and things like that. I love numbers, right? But there was a stat that I learned about a long time ago that said, when third grade males don't do well in standardized testing, it basically means that they have a higher percentage rate of being in trouble or going to jail, black males. And I was like, what a statistic. How do you get standardized testing from going
Right.
to jail? Like, where's the link between that, right? So I want to do some more research into that. Um, I don't know. This has been a really dope conversation.
Agree.
I think about even with like diplomas, right? I don't know. Is it just a rite of passage? Like, there's so many different ways that we could take this conversation when it comes to miseducation, and it's like, well, is the miseducation on the part or the fault of the students? Is it the fault of the staff? Is it the fault of a higher entity? Right? Because we have to get this from somewhere. It's not like somebody's like, oh, I'm a teacher today, and they going out there teaching, and because even teachers, I believe, even some teachers don't have a say in how they're able to teach.
Oh,
And
of
I
course
think that's the
not.
same part. I think that sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely do agree. Um, there are a lot of contributing factors to miseducation, and it's such a broad spectrum. It's a myriad of um, people and policies that are involved, where literally it's a conveyor belt of what that student is supposed to look like in the end.
Right. I mean, you mentioned a very valid point in funding, right? And the lack of investment in funding for certain demographics, it goes back to that. What we all wonder, is it an oversight or is it a systemic issue?
Agreed.
Right? And,
Right.
it will that's always going to be like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Oversight, systemic issue, or systemic, however you want to say it. I don't know. Nevada and New York language. And Nevada would actually be upset with me saying Nevada because it's Nevada. They'd be like, you're not from here because you say Nevada.
I
Well,
say Nevada too, though.
we all say, if you from New York, you saying Nevada. If you from
Right.
Nevada, you saying Nevada. I'm like, it sounds better as Nevada, guys. Like, get with the program already. Sorry, I love my Nevadians, right? Um, Let me see. I'm trying to think. I really want to answer your question. I really feel like I'm leaving it to, I'm gonna be thinking about it all night.
But we could always do a part two.
You're right. Because I'm thinking about, is there a part in my education where I felt like there was some miseducation going on? And I really don't know. I don't know. High school, definitely, I don't feel miseducated.
Same here.
Um, Elementary, I don't think I felt miseducated. I think that was just a time where this is the work and do it. I think elementary school is the place where you really learn to love teachers or not like them.
Yeah, I can agree
I
with that.
think that's where you find, like, when you find that one teacher that's like, oh my gosh, this person contributed to my life and they don't even know, or you just know, like, they care.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a teacher, Miss Ellis. Miss Ellis was stern. Oh, I felt like she was the strictest teacher in the world. But when I think about her to this day,
Right.
right? Because I'm like, she was very like, listen, you got to do what you got to do. You got to get this stuff done. You got to everything that is no falsehood to what she was saying at all. But she was a little early in the game with elementary. Like when you try to teach elementary students about stuff like that, they just look at you like you mean
Mm-hmm.
old lady. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but when you think about it later, you like, oh, I know exactly what she was doing, and you like, she was right for doing it.
See, I wore a uniform all my school life, and I think that for me,
Mhm.
being in that attire
Right.
you were expected to conduct yourself
Oh,
in a
and
very specific manner. And you were also expected to excel academically,
mm,
at least in my household. So my experience was very totalitarian, right? Because my mother was non-negotiable when it came to education.
mm,
We didn't get to stay home. We didn't get sick days. We were only home if it was like, holiday break. And so, getting a perfect attendance award at the superintendent's office was a regular for me, but that was not something that I was proud of. you know, she was, but I wasn't. But yeah, I think that miseducation is something that it continues to expand,
mhm,
right? The more that you chop away at it, because there are so many different players in this one pot, right? And this is just for one student. And again, like I said, it's a conveyor belt of that final product.
mm,
Is this student apt for college?
right,
Or is this someone, like you stated earlier, a very profound statement that you made, wherein as this country, education is not something that is a priority or a focus because maybe it's more farmland, right? Maybe it's more industrial.
right.
So I think that this is something that we could keep discussing.
Let me tell you. All right, we're gonna end with this. I got one last question. This question is for guests, people watching, you as well, right? What would you like to see changed, right, so that future generations have a more empowering and accurate education?
That's a great question.
I know, right? I love Tia Talks.
I do too. Um, I think if I were to answer that question simply, what I would say, one of the changes that I would want to see is more funding. I mean, you have taxpayers where a lot of that tax dollars is allocated
Mhm.
to education. When we have these political campaigns, they're constantly touching on education. So
Right.
it is something that is very, very important in the US. But I think that if we have more funding, we could then offer more support, more resources, more after school programs, more recreational programs, more health care in schools. Like, I can give you a list of things to answer that one question, but I would like to know your answer.
Ooh, I didn't think about it. I usually just ask the questions. I don't usually answer them too. Mm, I think I really want to. I always want to go back to like being in the field, right? I think that that is one thing that I want to see changed in education. I think less actual in the classroom sitting down and more outside learning, I think for me would be a great start because when we're in a classroom, we get taught that the world is a specific way. And then when
Mhm.
we become adults, we find out this is not it at all. This is not what,
Mhm.
like, we complain. I'll speak for myself. I complain now that certain math that we took, I'm not using it at all.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
Absolutely.
why did I need to waste time learning this if I'm not going to use it? I think that for those industries that know this is the math you need, boom, that is the math you need to take, right? But I think that there should be like more I think education needs more being in the field, more actually going out and seeing, hey, let's visit this industry and let's see what they do. Let's see the impact that they're making in the community. Let's go to this business. This is the mom and pop store, such and such and such. Let's learn how they did it, right? Because yeah, if you really want to create obedient workers, right? And show them what the work is. So they can decide for themselves whether they want to do it or not.
Agreed.
When I first went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to go for. It
Right.
took me a couple of rounds to figure out what I wanted to do. And then when I thought I wanted to be a teacher, I was like, they don't get paid enough. Honestly,
that's still true.
They, if I was in the field and I would have saw all the work that they did and saw, oh, wait a minute, this is what they make. They should be paid more. Then I might have started advocating for more pay for them. My life would have went a completely different way, maybe. Maybe I'd have been an advocate for teachers and professionals and things like that. Because they do a lot of freaking work.
Yeah.
Preschool makes less than K through 12.
Yeah.
And we're the beginning.
Right, absolutely.
Not to say it like that, all teachers are professionals, but I'm just saying, like, we do a lot of I'll just say thank you to the preschool teachers out there, right? Not to take
Shout out to the preschool teachers.
Right. Not to take anything away from K through 12 or, college professors or anything like that. But I think that we're like the unsung heroes of the crew.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we need some recognition too.
Agreed.
I've seen so many preschool teachers come out of their pocket to pay for supplies and things like that. And then have to wait to get, and then once a month you're getting paid like once a month.
Yeah.
Money already gone by the time. It's just unsung heroes. Preschool. Anyway, shout out to the unsung heroes of the preschool population. Yeah, I want to see more field stuff. Okay. I think that would help a great deal. I think that way it is accurate because what you see is what it is. There's no somebody telling me what it is, and then I get out there. That's like I didn't really learn until college that most professors who teach business never even freaking owned a business before. How the hell are you going to teach me about something you never did? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Agreed.
Oh, and how are they able to teach it? Because they passed the freaking test.
Yeah.
You could be book smart all you want. You still got to have some sort of street sense, common sense, and things like that. Anyway, we're going off topic and into a totally different subject. So I will say, Jeanette, once again, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
For being a guest on Tia Talks with your girl.
Thank you for having me.
Join us again next time. Lovely people out there in the world. Thank you guys for joining us. And like I said, put it in the chat, right? What would you like to see changed so that future generations can have a more empowering and accurate education? Put in the chat. Let us know. Thanks for visiting. Love you guys. See you next time. Later.